All right, everyone. Well, welcome. Good evening. Hope everyone's having a great Wednesday night, and welcome to our second of 5 Amplify DU webinars. This one on 365 recruitment. Before we get going, just a real quick kind of logistical piece. Please make sure that your name is your first and last name. That is how we're making sure we are tracking attendance, and that you all will be marked as attended for your chapter for this webinar and this portion of the program. So just a real quick note there for all attendees if you don't have your first and last name in there. Anyways, ready to jump in and talk 365 recruitment with you all. Again, super excited to have you all here tonight and talk through this idea of 365 recruitment, which I know a lot of you have known the idea about it, and Dominic and I will share a little bit more about what that looks like and get a little bit more in depth over the next hour together. So most of you or all of you should know who I am based off the copious amount of emails I've been sending out over the past few weeks in our last webinar. And so my name's Hayden Ron. I serve as the Director of Chapter Development and Growth. I'm a 2016 graduate from the University of Oregon, where I served as Vice President of Recruitment, Chapter President, and currently on staff overseeing the growth of the fraternity, expansion, also serving as liaison to a handful of chapters, also helping our newer groups or associate chapters completing that phase to become a full chapter. And with me tonight, I have Dominic Green, so I'll turn it over to him to let him introduce himself.
Unmute. Okay, love Zoom. Okay, hello everyone. My name is Dominic. I know some of you. I recognize a lot of names on the panelists from my interactions. So I'm the Director of Health and Safety Initiatives for the fraternity. I'm also an Oregon DU. Hayden and I were not in the chapter at the same time, but we did get an opportunity to work together when Hayden was an undergrad. So I was former chapter president, VP loss prevention for a couple of years, an AM educator. I took a different path. My experience with recruitment during undergrad was actually more so on the IFC recruitment side, as well as working a lot with our informal recruitment periods. So we'll talk more about that a little bit later, but excited to be here tonight. I had Hayden's job 20 years ago, so it's kind of fun to be talking about recruitment again. It's one of my passions, so excited to be here tonight.
Awesome. Thanks, Dominic. And we're super excited to have your expertise and knowledge in talking about this topic. So to jump in, and again, like I said, a lot of you have known or heard this idea of 365 recruitment, and maybe on your campuses, your IFCs have talked about it. And some chapters I know are actually practicing 365 recruitment. For some of you, you've heard about it, but you're not too sure what this means. And so tonight we'll kind of talk through what that means and how do you be successful in that process, because recruitment is more than just a few weeks in a semester finding the guys for that semester or for the chapter of that year. So what is 365 recruitment? 365 recruitment is exactly what it sounds like. It's recruiting 365 days of the year in different capacities, and Dominic will talk a lot about that in different zones and what that looks like. Clearly, we have our formal process, we have our informal process, we have what we do during our off times. So what does recruitment look like there? But it really is about the continuous relationship building and recruitment of just potential members into the organization. And we'll talk why that's important. Why is that vital moving into this next school year? Why is it going to help you all as chapter leaders, chapter VPs of recruitment, chapter presidents, advisors, as you're advising your chapters that you work with? And so 365 recruitment is something that it's helpful. And it's something that the mindset is going to change for a lot of groups, because it really is going to change into what are we doing on a consistent and constant basis when it comes to recruitment, rather than we're just going to take the month of August, maybe the half month of September, recruit, really plan there, recruit our men, and then wait until January, February to go recruit our next class, right? And so again, we're going to talk about why that's important and what does that look like. One of the best examples I always give about really successful 365 recruitment outside of the fraternity realm, and I think something in a place we can really learn a lot, is college football recruiting. So Nick Saban, Dabo Sweeney. I had to throw Mario Cristobal in there. It wouldn't be a presentation of Dominic and I doing it if we didn't throw the Oregon head coach in there. And I'll throw Dan Mullen in there because he's been a really great recruiter for Florida and has had some really recent success. Plus Dominic and I are huge sports fans, right? And so we love college football. The thing that these four have in common on a consistent basis is that they implement 365 recruitment within their programs. And there's a ton of other individuals, right? Jimbo Fisher, Kirby Smart, Chris Peterson when he was at Washington and Boise State. I say that reluctantly, don't necessarily like the Huskies, but have to give credit where credit's due with Chris Peterson there and his recruitment tactics. But what they do is they really implement this idea of 365 recruitment, right? When they are recruiting for their programs, when Alabama's recruiting, when Florida, when Oregon, when Clemson, when Georgia, now even North Carolina, because Mac Brown's there and he implements this really well. They are consistently going out and building relationships with the best athletes, with the coaches, with the individuals who they know can bring in not only the talent, but also the quality of men that they want within their program. They know that there's a national signing day. They know how many scholarships they have to give out, just like you all know that there's a bid day and that there's a recruitment goal and all of these pieces. And they're not just waiting until the weeks before or the months before to go out and find their scholarship athletes. They are putting that work in months. Obviously, we know years ahead of time. They're developing relationships constantly on a daily basis. They're reaching out. They're checking in. They're hey, how's home life going? How's high school going? How's this camp going? Hey, come visit. When you're up at Oregon or when you're in Tuscaloosa, let's have a dinner. Let's do something together to build that relationship. And so that is what 365 recruitment's all about. It's going out and building those relationships on a consistent basis. It's going out and saying, who are the best men that we can find? Who are the best potential members in different organizations coming into college, whether they're an honor student or whether we have a list of all students who graduated high school in the top of their class, right? So they're finding those men just like we as fraternity men and you all as leaders within your chapter and VPs of recruitment need to go find those men yourself. And Dominic will talk about that, but they are consistently doing it. So 365 recruitment is all about that relationship building. Because at the end of the day, and anyone who has met with me, anyone who's been in a presentation with me knows that at the base level, the foundation of recruitment is about the people and the relationships that the guys are building, right? The relationships that they build with members, the relationships that they build with the values of the organization, the relationship they build with the organization as a whole. And if you think you can do that within a 2-week time frame within IFC recruitment, that's really tough, right? And that mindset needs to change a little bit to say, we need to expand that to the entire year. And we need to consistently be doing that. That doesn't mean that I need to necessarily be giving out bids or extending bids in the middle of a semester. It doesn't necessarily mean that I need to take a new member class in July. All it means is that in those time periods, we need to continue to build those relationships. We need to make sure that those individuals understand the organization. We can tell them about the organization, all of those pieces. And like I said, I love the idea of 365 recruitment, especially the way in which college recruiters or college athletic head coaches do it, because they're a great example of building that relationship. And there's a lot of times you see an individual, you might say, man, that guy's going to Alabama, that guy's going to Clemson. He ends up going to some other school. And the reason was I had a great relationship with the head coaches. I really valued what they were talking to me. They really felt like somebody I could connect with. That's the same idea when it comes to fraternity. Men can make those decisions. And although you might say, I'm not too sure if this guy's going to join DU, and then all of a sudden he accepts his bid, and he goes, the reason I did it was because of the men and because of the relationships I built. And that's a lot of the reason I can, I'm not a betting man, but I'll put a lot of money on the fact that most of us on this call joined DU because of those relationships we built. And so 365 recruitment really helps that as we move forward. I think a couple other pieces here on why 365 recruitment is really important and something that really you all as chapter members need to be thinking about implementing are these 4 kind of different areas. First, it provides consistent relationship building with potential new members. If we just limit ourselves to the formal IFC process, maybe the continuous open bidding process, or just one semester because that's kind of what our IFC does, or that's what our campus allows us to do, then we're not consistently building relationships with potential new members. And if we're not consistently building relationships with potential new members, it makes our recruitment a lot tougher, right? It also doesn't set us up for success, because if I have a really good relationship with somebody, right, and I know that they necessarily can't join until the spring, or it is June, what is it, June 16th, and they can't join, or we're not going to have a new member class until August. If I have a good relationship with them, I'm going to get to the point, more or less, especially if they're interested in DU, to where I know by the time I'm able to give them a bid, they are going to say, yes, I want to be a part of Delta Upsilon. It's what Dabo Sweeney, Nick Saban, Mario Cristobal, Dan Mullen, all those coaches do anyways, right? Like they go into National Signing Day already knowing 90% of who they're going to sign that day, right? And so that's a testament to the relationship that they're building and the conversations that they're having and the work that they're putting in, even before their quote unquote bid day, which is in their case, National Signing Day, actually happens. The second one is it keeps chapters focused on adding names, a names list year round. We see it all the time. Chapters go through fall recruitment, they go through spring recruitment, they have their names list, they're done. And then you ask the VP of recruitment a month later, do you have a names list? And they're not too sure. Or yeah, we do, but we haven't added it to it, or I haven't looked at it in a couple months, right? When I think about 365 recruitment, I'm constantly thinking as a chapter, how do I add somebody, right? I met Dominic, I went to the gym, I met Dominic, and Dominic, him and I really hit it off. Then we went and grabbed a bite to eat afterwards. I think Dominic, would be a great fit for Delta Upsilon, and it's the middle of June, right? We're in summer classes, but I'm going to add him to the names list, right? And we're going to continue to build that relationship because he could join in the fall, right? And so it's continually thinking about, okay, if we're continuously recruiting or continuously building relationships, even in times where we're not maybe extending bids or doing all those things, it keeps in the back of a chapter's mind, or even you as the VP of recruitment, it get back to your mind that we need to continue to add to our names list year round and not get into this habit or stay into this mindset of it's just going to be a names list for a couple of months. And then we're going to revisit that in a couple months down the line for the next semester. The third piece is it allows for the chapter to find quality men over a longer period of time rather than through a handful of events and interactions, right? I experienced this as an undergraduate. I know a lot of you've probably experienced this. You go through 2 weeks of recruitment, you get to the end of it, and you're trying to figure out if these 3 or 4 guys are quality individuals who should be given a bid into the organization, right? And all we have to kind of go off of are these handful of events and these handful of interactions, right? And a lot of times we can talk through that. And a lot of the times, we make those decisions, but wouldn't it be a lot easier if we had a lot more time based off months or maybe weeks or maybe a whole year or whatever that looks like of really getting to know that individual? What qualities does he have to bring to the organization? Where could he be a leader within the organization? Maybe he might be a good fit to go to dual and then end up going and being in a leadership position, right? So it allows for kind of you all to say, hey, I have a better idea of the quality of individual that I'm bringing into the organization. On the flip side, and this is point 4, it allows the potential new member to better understand Delta Upsilon over a longer period rather than a handful of events and interactions, right? So again, it can be really tough for somebody going through recruitment to say, I've gone to 5, 6 different fraternities, I'm hearing all this information, now I'm trying to make a decision where, hey, I've been talking to Delta Upsilon for the past 3 months. They've told me all about their values, what they do as a brotherhood, kind of what their vision and direction is as a chapter. And as an organization, I really feel like I get to know the chapter. I get to know the organization that I'm joining. And that helps you all in the long run. It helps you retain the member, right? They know exactly what to expect within the chapter and within the organization, rather than I think I do because of these few events that I went to and I really hit it off with the guys, which is great, right? But this will obviously make it a lot easier, both on your end and the potential new members' end, because of just that time that you spent getting to know someone. And the last one is it sets the chapter up for success in reaching recruitment goals, right? Because, and we'll talk about this and why it's important, especially for this next year, and how that relates to the goals that you all were sent last week or the week before, as well as kind of those internal goals that you set for yourself. Is when you think about 365 recruitment, that means I have a whole year to really focus in on achieving those goals, right? Rather than just the 2 weeks in the fall. Right. And just like I said, if I'm recruiting 365 and this summer I go and I meet 10 guys and my goal for the fall is 20 and I meet 10 guys, and out of those 10 guys, 7 have told me, yes, I really want to be a part of this. That they're a quality individual. that's already a head start than just going into an IFC formal recruitment saying, I need to go recruit 20 guys. Instead, you can say, I have 7 guys who I've known for 3 months who can not only help me with recruitment, but I also don't have to worry about recruiting them. I can put a lot of attention and effort on other individuals who are on campus, who maybe I haven't met, who maybe signed up for IFC formal recruitment, whatever that looked like. And so it really sets you all up for success because it changes that mindset of, I have that entire time to really build those relationships and find those men, instead of, I only have 2 weeks to go find 15 men, which like that gives me a lot of stress and anxiety just thinking about it, right? Where it's, I get to know and build those relationships and feel confident going into recruitment that might happen. So I'm going to turn it over to Dominic. I think, here he's going to talk about what we call recruitment planning zones, right? So there's different times throughout the year in which recruitment looks different. And so he's going to talk a little bit about what that looks like. And obviously you all thinking about, what does that look like for my chapter, depending on when recruitment is, depending on where we're at currently. So I'm going to turn it over to Dominic to him to talk a little bit about those recruitment planning zones.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Hayden. So we hear the concept 365, and honestly, I remember hearing that concept when I was an undergrad, and I remember that it's kind of overwhelming, right? So thinking about like, that is a lot to think about, and Hayden talked about, it doesn't mean you're getting bids every day. It does not look like that though, but what we try to do is break it down into, you see 6 different zones right here. It's depending on if you're on the quarter system or semester. Semester system schools, we're going to focus on 5 zones. Quarter system, it's like 6, and then potentially a 7th zone because you have 3 potential opportunities to recruit. So we're gonna talk through what this kind of looks like. So I mentioned in the intros that I was not the recruitment chair as an undergrad, but I was super involved in the recruitment process, right? So a lot of what I did was behind the scenes, especially logistics, picking up ice for, picking up soda, picking up food, going to grab the wings for an event, right? A lot of it was being at our formal recruitment events, going to other events we did. My role, I mentioned before, was a lot of informal recruitment, which I'll talk about in a second. So let's talk about these different zones. I understand that for some of your schools, some of these activities we're going to talk about, they'd be like, they're not going to let us do that. Well, hear us out. We want you to hear about some potential opportunities, because a lot of these things, a lot of recruitment really comes down to it's friendship, right? It's meeting new people that potentially could be members for our chapter, right? So that's what it comes down to. So I'm a product of summer recruitment. Back in the day, I was that awkward little freshman from Southern California, and I signed up for IFC recruitment materials at summer orientation when I was at Oregon. And I started immediately getting phone calls. I was getting meeting up with people throughout the summer, right? So I was a product of summer recruitment. It was a lot of, when I say informal types of events, it was barbecues, it was grabbing coffee, it was grabbing lunch with guys who happen to also be in Southern California who went to the University of Oregon. This is from all fraternities, right? So this is how the recruitment structure in Oregon was structured back when I was going through school. So, and then I ended up joining the chapter when I got there in the fall. So I didn't get a bid over the summer, but I did know, I kind of narrowed it down to 3 or 4 chapters of where I wanted to go. And then I ended up, obviously, I'm a member of DU 25 years later. So here's how it works. Breaking down summer, lots of opportunities to gather names, meet guys, find out who's coming to your university that coming fall, right? And we'll talk more about referrals, whatever that looks like. So, and then for early fall and early spring, or it could be early winter quarter, depending if you're on the quarter system, we're thinking about the formal recruitment period. But before the formal recruitment period, we're thinking about recruitment training. How are we getting our chapter prepared? How are we organized? Do we have all our events scheduled? If your chapter does have a formal, I'm using formal in air quotes, but if your chapter has a more structured IFC or more university kind of sponsored recruitment process, what does it look like to prepare for that, right? So do we have your recruitment team in place? Do everyone have specific roles? Do you have someone doing logistics? Do you have someone who's in charge of calling guys or texting guys or going on social media? What does that look like for you all? For our chapter, we did a significant amount so for a week before recruitment started, every night we'd have an hour or so recruitment training that we'd go over recruitment skills. We'd talk about what we're looking for. One of the activities we did every year that was the most powerful was we had everyone in the room talk about why they joined the fraternity and why they're still there. So everyone shared their recruitment journeys, and then we were all in a circle, and then we came back around, and then we shared, why are you still here? So really thinking about from a sophomore to a senior, why you really joined Delta Upsilon, and then what kind of impact the organization is still having on you. So we did that got guys fired up. We're super excited. Then we'd go into the formal recruitment period, but we were not done. So maybe we took a week off, but it was, the culture in our chapter was very much so, is continue as we recruited new guys and they moved into our associate member process. We would ask them who their friends were, who their roommates were, who lived on their floor. We would also ask them if they were joining any other student organizations. But that also meant for us is that we would also target specific student organizations. All of us were involved in something else on campus, but we would specifically meet people in classes. We also had an incentive structure. If I brought someone to the house for lunch, or if I brought someone to, we're playing poker at the house, and that person ended up joining the chapter, I got like a real small amount of money, like knocked off my dues, right? Well, it's pretty nominal, but it was a little bit of incentive to consistently always be on the lookout for guys who are potentially always going to be guys in the chapter. So what we really focused on when it says mid to late fall or mid to late spring was really kind of informal recruitment activity. So most of these events did not cost any money. This was things we're normally doing on an everyday basis. So it's going to the rec center, it was studying, it was watching, away games at the house. We had a basketball court in the backyard, so a lot of guys would play basketball in the backyard. It was a lot of things we're already doing, a lot of brotherhood events, right? So I mentioned poker, we might go hiking, whatever that might look like for you guys is what are the things that you guys are naturally just doing? If you're on the recruitment team or you are the head recruitment person for the chapter, you really should become really good friends with the Brotherhood Chair, because the Brotherhood Chair will be planning all these informal things that you don't have to plan, that you can just invite a couple potential new members to Brotherhood events you guys are doing to meet the guys, right? So it's a constant way for you guys. If you meet someone in October, you don't have to wait till January, like Hayden said. You can actually invite him to a couple events throughout the semester, and if you know that you want him, have an opportunity to bid him, right? So what does that look like for you guys? So what are all the informal things that you guys are already doing that you don't have to put pressure on yourselves? So not everything felt like a recruitment event. And honestly, the joke in our chapter for a lot of informal mid to late fall or mid to late spring events, a lot of people were like, yeah, we hung out like 3 or 4 times before we realized we're getting recruited, right? Be like, hey, do you want to stop by the house for lunch? Not realizing, oh, you live in a fraternity house, right? I mean, a lot of it was, what are those things that naturally, the 5-step recruitment model really talks about meeting them, making them your friends, introduce them to your friends, and then introducing the fraternity, right? So a lot of, like I said before, recruitment is friendship building. So what are those things you guys already do to do that as well? So, and then as we move into it, like I said, is you're constantly, as Hayden was talking about, building names, meeting people, and just staying organized. I think if you break down 365 in different zones, there's opportunities for you to assign people. I know a lot of chapters have a head recruitment person, and then they might have a couple people responsible for that formal recruitment period, right? Whatever that might be. You might have it 2 or 3 times. You might have once a year, twice a year, 3 times a year. That also means that you can have a lot more people involved in smaller scale events to build names, to work with your Brotherhood Chair, to plan events. It's an interesting dynamic. When I was a senior, I wasn't as involved with recruitment, but where our chapter did a really good job with is we included seniors in the, as Hayden mentioned, grabbing coffee, grabbing meals together, is our recruitment chair would meet a guy, especially in informal recruitment, be like, hey, this guy is like literally a mini version of Hayden. So Hayden, I need you. I know you're a senior. I know you're busy, but can you go with me and the recruitment chair with this prospective guy and have lunch with him, right? So a lot of it was smaller scale ways to keep our seniors involved, but that's how I stayed involved in recruitment my entire senior year. I was on IFC. I was president of 2 other organizations on campus. I was really busy, but I was willing to, because the recruitment chair made specific roles. We're very to making sure that paying attention to who the right senior or junior would be to interact with guys who were recruiting. So think about that as ways to get your older guys involved in the recruitment process, especially more smaller scale ways, because I know recruitment can be a little overwhelming. You're a senior, you've been around for 3 years already, and then you're meeting 18-year-olds and you're like, whoa, and there's like 50 guys, at this event. So whatever that might look like, just ways to keep more people involved. So let's dive into that next slide, Hayden. So we mentioned before, is building that names list. So we have an opportunity. So for a lot of schools, and I mentioned this before, in different zones, one of the zones that's really important is kind of that mid to late spring zone, which has an opportunity to start building your names list going into the next school year, because mid to late spring is when people start accepting their admission to your university, right? So if they know they're going to the University of North Carolina that next fall, they should know it's usually by May 1st, whether or not they're going to accept admission. So a lot of times they get their admissions acceptance in mid to late March. And then usually April is when they might be visiting campus with their parents. They might be stopping by and visiting all the schools that they were accepted into, right? So that's an opportunity for you guys to start building your names list. For those of you that do summer recruitment, you're building that names list maybe even as early as January, right? So people might have done early admission, whatever that might look like for you all, that you're knowing, guys, you're going back and you're immediately contacting people you know are coming to Kansas State that coming fall. You know guys that are coming to DePaul already. So what you can do, you can start building your names list and figuring out opportunities that if they come to Greencastle, they come to Manhattan, they come to Ithaca, what are opportunities for you to interact with them, to stop by the house or grab coffee with them, whatever that might look like for you all, is building that names list well before even the summer starts, right? So you have an opportunity to always be building your names list and figuring out ways to engage with new members, right? I depending if you have a facility or not, or have an opportunity just having like a barbecue on campus that you can invite, it's a great opportunity to interact with parents, right? That was something that we did a lot of, that we had guys in the chapter that we knew would be great with parents. So like their informal role on the recruitment team was like the parent chairs to give tours of the house to the parents, to really talk to parents, guys that they knew would not give like a used car salesman approach. You guys are gonna laugh, but sometimes guys can be just like not sound very genuine when they're trying to articulate like why join Delta Upsilon. So sometimes there's guys that are better at that, right? I was one of the parent people, maybe because I was 80 years old living in a 21-year-old body. I don't know, whatever that looks like. So, but I was always good to parents, and that was something that I didn't mind doing, is connecting with them. But also I knew that I could connect potential new guys and their parents with my mom, right? Because my mom at first was very, very anti-Greek, but my mom became a big fan of the organization, and she knew that Delta Upsilon meant a lot to me, and it did a lot for me, and she saw all the growth I did. So I know some chapters I've interacted with before have had guys willing to let their parents be allowed to be contacted by potential new members' parents as well, right? So there's opportunities to connect as well. So how else, like I said, once the semester quarter starts, what does building relationships look like for you, right? So there's great opportunities. So is connecting with classmates, coworkers, whatever that might look like, people that are in student organizations with you. We'll talk more about student organizations already, but these are opportunities that, and also connecting with people that might have gone to your high school. So I'll be honest, there's a couple people that went to my high school that I wasn't close with. I went to a really big high school in Los Angeles, but I knew they were coming to Oregon. So I reached out to them when they got to campus, grabbed coffee with them and reached out to them. And then a couple of them ended up joining the chapter, right? So how do you continuously kind of work those relationships? And as the head recruitment person or someone who's on the recruitment team, you need to continuously do that exercise of asking guys, who do you know is coming to campus this fall? Who do you know who's coming to Berkeley, right? Who's coming to Cal Poly this summer, or sorry, this fall? And how can you really start building up those lists? It doesn't mean you have to contact them right away. And it might be something where, hey, I was a senior, that guy was a freshman, I kind of knew him when I was in high school, not really, but allow the recruitment team to take over, but at least you have that natural connection that you guys have something in common, whatever that looks like. So we have up here on the screen is reaching out to different referral sources. So this is really important. A lot of chapters that started doing this is utilizing their alumni in asking for referrals. So they might have sons, grandsons, nephews, neighbors, their best friends' kids are coming to whatever campus you go to school at, whatever that looks like, is utilizing alumni, asking for alumni. Some chapters I know have set up a really quick, like easy Google form to send to their alumni, so they can send that out in their alumni newsletters. Also, what does it look like to ask for referrals from friends? So you might have friends, loved ones, partners, girlfriends, boyfriends that go to your campus. Ask them, do you know anyone who's coming to North Carolina this fall? Do you know anyone who's coming to Elon this fall? Is asking them and going from there. We'll talk about student org in a second. You want to make sure you're staying on social media as well. I know this is something that we do when we start new chapters, is that we do a significant amount of reach out to on there'll be a class of 2025 Facebook group. What are you doing to contact those guys? What are you doing? All those guys that are on Instagram is reaching out to them, Instagramming them, sending them messages, letting them know about DU, making sure also that the content on Instagram that you're using is actually up to date, right? What are you doing this summer to spotlight what's going on in your chapter? I know a lot of chapters I've talked to already going into the summer, talked about updating their content, but also spotlighting guys' internships for the summer. What are, maybe someone might be studying abroad this summer. What are, spotlighting different accomplishments of the chapter to make sure you have a lot of current content and a lot of content going into the fall. But how do you, like I said, when people are going to check out the organization, a lot of times they might Google, Delta Upsilon at Oregon. But that also could be good and bad news. But also, how do they want to see what you guys are doing, right? So a lot of times your social media has an opportunity to tell the story of what you guys do on campus, because a lot of times people ask about recruitment. So what do you guys do? And then you have an opportunity to kind of demonstrate and display all that. I'm going to ask this real quick question. This will be an interactive component. So if you pay attention. So thinking about strategic involvement in student organizations and student leadership roles on campus, what are some big student organizations on your campus that freshmen join? So when I think of, where are freshmen joining, but where are some of those student organizations on your campus that a lot of freshmen just gravitate to, maybe even before they join a fraternity? So I'll use one of them. When I used to work at Northwestern University, a lot of it was, we had a lot of pre-orientation programs. So freshmen would go camping with one of the groups. They did a pre-fall service trip. Some of them did a leadership trip. So are there any student organizations that freshmen join on your campus? So intramural sports, yeah, intramural Frisbee. Thank you, Riley. Dance marathon, absolutely. Student Senate, yep, student government, that's huge. What are some of the things that you all do? Ski club, cool. SRC, I'm not sure what that is. Orientation student government, yep, orientation leaders are huge. One of the things I know some campuses are being an RA, having guys, if you have the opportunity or ability to have guys be RAs, orientation leaders, club sports, yeah, absolutely. So thinking about being strategic, move-in day volunteers, that's awesome. Debate club. I know a lot of like Model UN, debate club, I will say I've seen a lot of service organizations as well as religious organizations sometimes that our chapters have had success with, right? So it's naturally just opportunity to meet guys. I mean, there were a couple, I was involved with the religious I was involved with Hillel on campus. And a lot of people, I wore a shirt to an event and people are like, you're in a fraternity? I'm like, yeah, yes, I'm president. But they were surprised that, someone who was, I think they had a stereotype in their head of what a fraternity guy looks like or has to act, right? So it's an opportunity for you all to meet people. I know a lot of chapters have high encouragement levels for everyone in the chapter should be involved in something on campus, right? So getting your name out there, but being really strategic. And I know, I will say this, I spent 15 years working on a college campus. The chapters that recruited the best were the ones that had their hands over all the freshman heavy student organizations, and those chapters just cleaned up in recruitment. So really think about that. It might be too late going in this fall, but how can you make sure strategically that you're getting those guys to apply for positions, get involved in those organizations, and making sure that they're all over those organizations, just as informal ways to meet guys, right? Because I understand that, especially with COVID, we have no idea what the fall's gonna look like on a lot of your campuses, but just being really smart about that. So you should, as a recruitment team member, go back and start thinking about what that looks like for getting involved on campus, and then really starting to sort out what kind of roles you want on your recruitment team. So maybe someone who really focuses on the formal recruitment periods, someone who does informal recruitment periods. I know one of the chapters I work with, they have 2 VP recruitments. One does all logistics, meaning planning events, booking rooms, picking up all the food, all that stuff. And then the other person manages the names list, contacts people, and calls people. They have a recruitment team behind them, but they have very clear positions, a logistics person, and then like an organization person. And then those 2 people connect with each other. So perfect.
Yeah, Don, a couple things I'd love to add. On the social media piece, I think it's really important. I think Dominic hit it on the head of staying current and what you need to do. I also always am a huge advocate and recommend put how to contact the chapter within your bio.
Yes.
An 18-year-old freshman, you think it's just like, hey, just DM us. They're going to get nervous and anxious that DMing you is going to turn you away or whatever the case is, right? Or you may not see that, right? Because not always the VP of recruitment is in charge of the social media account, right? So if I put contact VP of Recruitment Dominic Green at this number, it gives them somebody to text or to email, or I know a couple of our groups do a really good job of just putting a Google form in their bio and say, if you're interested, fill this out, we'll reach out to you right after, right? And so it allows for them to get their contact information and then you doing that follow-up outreach. That's the first thing. I think the second thing is, yeah, it might be too late to get involved in some of those things which are freshman heavy, but it's not going to be too late to get involved in events that are freshman heavy come the fall semester, right? And so there's a lot of things, right, that especially this upcoming fall, if things start opening back up on a lot of your campuses, you know that your orientation programs, your first year student programs, even your transfer student programs are going to try to do as much as they can to bring in those students. And quite frankly, even just in general, there's probably going to be a lot just for general students because of the past year. And so being very cognizant and seeing, hey, there's an event happening. Let's go to that and just start meeting guys, right? Hey, they need volunteers. Let's make sure we have a few guys who are volunteering at this. Obviously, a lot of you guys know there might be a freshman club fair. Let's make sure that we get a table at the freshman club fair. Like those things that you all can be involved with are really important. And although you might not be able to be an orientation leader this summer, you can still have your hand in some of those freshman pieces there. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially to wear letters and just be present to make sure that people see you out and about, right? Because I remember I mentioned before that I was recruited over the summer, but the chapter that I saw wearing letters or just paraphernalia or merch on campus was the DU chapter, right? I started seeing that all over campus when I got there in the fall. And then I was like, oh yeah. And then I connected with the guys that I met over the summer and boom, 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 you know, I ended up joining. So like I said, it was an opportunity that I had DU high on my list, but it was when I actually got to meet the guys in person, I knew it was the right chapter for me. So perfect. All right, next slide. All right, so I talked about a lot of this already, but we want you guys to think about it. Like, it's not a nonstop stress level. I understand that a lot of chapters lead recruitment person, you might have one or two people get really burned out after that formal period. This is an opportunity. This is where we talked about, and I think this will be talked about further in future conversations, is expanding your recruitment team, giving them roles. What does that look like to be able to recruit constantly and not just during that formal period of time? Like I said, it doesn't have to be, everything doesn't have to feel like a recruitment event. It really can, as we mentioned before, is thinking about is how can we make sure that we are doing things free, cheap, things we're already doing, so it doesn't feel like that pressure, right, to go out there. So it's important to do that and think about what does this look like for all of you. So like I said, we expand the chapter's reach to student organizations. It gives us an opportunity to create a more diverse group of individuals as well. I know for a lot of schools, like being an out-of-state student can be kind of intimidating as well, because you don't have those high school connections, you don't have those opportunities. So informal recruitment periods really also allow you to reach out to those out-of-state guys who maybe couldn't get to campus early enough to do your formal things, right? They just didn't have time. Their parents were in town. Things were just crazy, right? So what does that look like? It's also getting involved with a lot of student organizations on campus that thinking outside the box, right? So if it is culturally based organizations, if it's religious-based organizations, if it's some kind of social justice and advancement of justice type of organization that's doing really good work on campus, by guys in the chapter joining those organizations, you also might open up the door for you all to meet a more diverse group of individuals that you might not even think about as well. We have that opportunity, especially with an open ritual and no secrets, that we already have that ability with justice and with culture being two of our founding principles, that we have the opportunity to reach out to people that's different, but we also need to make sure that we're creating an inclusive environment, right? We want to recruit them, we want to invite them to things, but some people who might be first generation college students might be very turned off or intimidated by that formal recruitment process. So this allows us to continue to recruit people throughout the year. Because I do know this, so a lot of people, neither of my parents went to college. So for me, I did not have a whole lot of direction. It was very random that my great-grandmother and my grandfather were great, but neither of my parents were, right? So it was an interesting dynamic there where neither of my parents went to college. So I really kind of had to figure it out my own, and I went out of state, right? So it was an opportunity for you to reach out. So summer recruitment was helpful for me because it was very informal. But that was, like I said, that was something that we did at Oregon at the time, but not all of your campuses are set up for that, right? And then, like I said, we just want you all to have an opportunity, greater chapter success, greater success. There's also times though where your formal recruitment period just didn't go as well, or your chapter just really does better in smaller informal types of events. Like the 30, 40 person event might just be overwhelming and just not might be the thing for your chapter. We want to help you guys improve those, because a lot of times that's something your chapter wants to improve on, but it gives you an opportunity to give strengths to people who would much rather engage in some of those smaller scale events. And like I said, that was our way of engaging our seniors, was to get them involved in a lot of those smaller scale events. And it just allowed us to really have guys who really love the formal events and the informal events, and then being able to continue to work on that throughout the year, and not have recruitment be very stressful, because we were continuing to recruit guys throughout the year. And there are times though, depending on timing, sometimes we gave out bids mid quarter, and then other times we waited and gave them out at the beginning of we kind of at the beginning of the next quarter, just determining on where that guy was and whether he was willing, or sorry, not willing necessarily, willing and / able to accept right then and there, right? So we were able to do that. I understand that some of your campuses are very strict about when you can give out bids. Totally get that. But as Hayden and I talked about this when we were prepping for this presentation, there's opportunities though, that if you meet someone who seems really interested, but you have to wait an entire semester, what are those opportunities that you want to keep that guy interested? Because what you don't want to do is you're like, yeah, we have a lock in Hayden. Hayden's definitely joining. And then other chapters start reaching out to Hayden, and then they're just whining and dining Hayden, and not literally whining him, but what does that look like, is to be able to, how to make sure that we're continuing to keep this individual interested in us, but also making sure that you all are just doing the normal things you're doing, which is why connecting with your service chair, your brotherhood chair, whoever the people who plan events for the chapter, so you can, like I said, you can continue to invite guys. It was easy for us to pull up our calendar and say, oh, hey, what are you doing next Saturday? And we knew what we were doing that next Saturday, right? So we had a really up-to-date chapter calendar that was updated with social events and brotherhood events. And we're doing pumpkin carving with Chi Omega, or whatever your service event with a sorority, whatever that looks like, is being able to always have something that you could potentially invite a potential member to. So awesome.
I think another piece, Dominic, just for everyone, is it's, again, very simple, but if you know you're doing something with the chapter, just reaching out and seeing if that individual is available, right? Because if they're not, no harm, right? You're doing something anyways, but even just the thought of saying, hey, we're going to go to the rec, we're going to hop on and play some 2K, we're going to do whatever. Even just the thought goes a long way, right? And it's those simple things that are going to make that person feel like, wow, that's really important. They thought about me and bringing me. And next time I'm going to make sure that I'm there. Next time I'm going to make sure we plan something, because then you never know. They might be, hey, I'm not free, but you want to go grab lunch this weekend, right? So it might turn into something different. I think the other piece too, in not limiting yourself, is if you're just going through IFC recruitment, that's the only time you're recruiting, you're probably recruiting these just always joiners, right? These guys who always want to join a fraternity, but there are plenty of individuals. I was one, right? And I didn't join until my sophomore year, until DU was coming back to campus, and I knew what I was looking for, and I always wanted a fraternity. I didn't honestly know how to get involved with one, but I was kind of a maybe joiner. Maybe I was going to join, maybe I wasn't. And if you are just limiting yourself to the individuals who are just signing up for IFC recruitment or just coming to the events, and you're not going out and doing the outreach yourself, then you're not going to find those quantity and quality of men that you're looking for, because they're all over campus, right? On a 20,000 person campus, there are 20 men out there who are the quality to join Delta Upsilon. It's your job to go find them. And I think that's another key piece, is 365 recruitment. And just recruitment in general does not mean that guys are coming to you and knocking on your front door to join the organization. There might be some guys who do that, right? But it's your job to go recruit those guys. And so everything that you can do throughout the entire year to build those relationships and recruit those individuals is really your job as the VP of recruitment, right? And your team, right? And like we talked about in the blog post last week, and as Dominic has shared tonight, it's, you have to have that team around you as well. And so those are just, I think, a few other key points that really play into this idea of 365 recruitment. Is it allows for you to meet some of those guys who maybe missed IFC recruitment, maybe have thought about it, but they didn't want to go through IFC recruitment, or whatever the case is. So don't limit yourself to just that time period. So we will turn it over. That's really everything that we have, but we want to turn it over and see what questions that you guys have, if there's anything there. So we'll give you some time to fill out any questions that you might have for Dominic or myself.
I know it's kind of random. We often used our chapter meetings as recruitment events, especially during once the formal period was over. So our chapter meetings were usually pretty entertaining. We tried to keep them relatively light, but it was an opportunity for to see the business side of the fraternity. A lot of people who might have been super involved in leadership roles in high school, student government or whatnot. I was one of those dorks that was involved in student government all 4 years. So I literally went to my first chapter meeting, and in my head I was like, I'm gonna be president of this one day. This is literally my first chapter meeting. So like I said, it was a good opportunity to show the leadership potential and leadership opportunities that are available for the chapter. So that was a free informal event that we always used pretty well. So.
Yeah, us too. Yeah, and I think a lot of chapters as I work with them doing that as well. There's a question or kind of just a statement. I think Dominic can between just our knowledge answer this, but if there's any groups that also do summer recruitment or heavy summer recruitment, feel free and please put your answer into the box to everyone. And make sure it's all panelists and attendees. But they would like to hear about any recruitment events that other schools do during the summer. So what are some of those events during the summer look like? So again, if you are a heavy summer recruitment group and you want to share, please share that in the chat. But I think between Dominic and I think really the ones that come to mind, especially with the groups that I work with, are the simple, they just take guys to dinner and they just bring them and show them around. If they have a chapter house, they go through the chapter house, but they really just do some of those informal pieces, right? And they're just like, let's grab a meal, let's bring you, let's have you for a weekend. All of those pieces there, I think is really the first one that comes to mind that's super simple. But Dominic, anything on your end? I know there's some things coming in the chat as well, so appreciate your guys' participation in that.
Yeah, no, like exactly what Hayden said. A lot of the chapters that do summer recruitment really well. I was the former advisor for Kansas State, so I saw it firsthand, but I also saw it as a product of this is depending where people are located during the summer. So I'm just going to use I'll use University of Iowa for a good example. You might have people in Des Moines, you might have people in Iowa City, you might have people in Quad Cities, and you might have people in Chicago, right? If you have a grouping of people, and this happened my chapter, right? There's people in the Southern California area, the Bay Area, Eugene, Oregon, Portland, and Seattle, right? So we had people kind of up the West Coast. Is that if you have maybe 3 or 4 people that are willing to meet up with recruits throughout the summer and do exactly what Hayden just mentioned. So it could be a one-on-one lunch, it could be coffee, but also could be an opportunity to do some kind of event, right? So I see a summer golf outing. I know that some chapters have taken guys to baseball games. So, in smaller groups, you don't have to do some kind of larger scale event. I know some chapters have had guys, their parents will volunteer their house to do a barbecue at their house, right? So anything like that, to just start the recruitment process early and start meeting the guys face to face so they can actually meet the brothers. Like I said, unless your campus has a very strict rule against this, which I don't think most campuses don't, is being able to create those opportunities that it doesn't have to be just in the city that you go to school at, right? So it can be because when there's a large grouping of individuals from a particular geographic area or metropolitan area, is start planning some of those events. So it could be 1 or 2 things this summer. Some chapters strategically, I know one of our chapters is very smart by having, they have guys in Dallas, they have guys in Houston, they have guys in Oklahoma City, and they have guys in Norman. Talking about Oklahoma, right? So, but it's one of those types of things. So if you have questions about that, Hayden and I can connect you with those chapters. We also have a lot of experience with that as well, is just being strategic on where you can actually have enough people around that are willing to either take potential new members out. And then this is where your chapter needs to figure out, is there a budget for them to do this? You give them a budget, but also are they willing to just meet people throughout the summer, right? So it's making those connections, and it's meet them, make them your friends, introducing your friends, right? And then fraternity. So it's pretty simple.
Great question. Yeah. And appreciate, again, everyone's responses in the chat. That's awesome. Really appreciate that from you all. Another question from Jeremy from a Florida chapter. What are some good ways to reach out to out-of-state students? So I think for me, kind of initial thought is, one, it's kind of difficult to know who's out of state, right? And so that's one piece where I'm not sure. I can guess, maybe based off a social media profile. That's why I think social media DMing is really important, right? Because I just don't know anyone is able to do it. What's great about what we've learned this past year with COVID is no matter where you're at, you can recruit someone. I can recruit, I mean, even on the expansion front, we recruited 16 guys at the University of Delaware, all virtually, and I was in California and our consultant was in Indiana, right? And so we were able to do it that way. I think, Jeremy, and last piece, and I'll let Dominic kind of give his thoughts, is also use your campus resources. I'm a huge advocate of just go talk to your campus resources, whether it's the admissions office or orientation office, and just say, hey, I'm looking to, here's what DU has to offer, here's what we're looking to do. We just want to reach out to students. Is there a list I can get, or is there a resource on campus, or what might you think is a good way to do that? So again, DU is obviously a partner. You're on that campus, so go talk to those resources as well.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Resources include also, like, is IFC collecting information for guys at orientation? What is IFC doing? Because depending on the institution, if they're not doing it, I would reach out to IFC and ask them if they're doing it, if they have plans to do that. The Greek advisor might also have opportunities as well. So your fraternity and sorority advisor might also be gathering this information as well. So people who are sign up for either prospective people, like I said, it's hard, and depending on, like I said, some out-of-state students come there specifically for a major, right? So there might be opportunities to reach out within your college, or so if someone is going to the University of North Dakota, it's a possibility they might be an aviation major, right? So there might be GroupMe's or Facebook groups for aviation students in those, and then you could see where people are from, right? So there's an opportunity potentially academically to figure out if it's an academic program based, because a lot of times people come there, or sometimes they go to Ohio State because everyone in their family went to Ohio State, right? So there's some opportunities, but that person grew up in Idaho, right? So you just don't know. So I think that there's some ways to, I would definitely talk to the guys in your chapter to, especially either if they're involved in any of their academic programs, or like scholarship groups, academic groups, or in any student organizations, as they're seeing people starting to express interest from out of state, and then being able to reach out, because especially if you have people who are out of staters, those are good connections. I know specifically for me, it was helpful for me to connect with other out of state people that are being like, hey, I totally get it. I know you don't know a ton of people you're coming to campus. It's, fraternity is a great way to join an organization. And that's where I mentioned before that a lot of my prior experience as an undergrad was I was on the IFC recruitment team for 2 years. So a lot of my job was to selling what a fraternity is and the benefits of joining a fraternity. And then we handed over the chapters to sell DU, right? So, but it was an opportunity to really sell all the benefits, knowing that because of COVID, but also knowing that the last couple years have not been great for the fraternity industry, as when it comes to high profile deaths and high profile drinking incidents and things like that on campus. Even during COVID, we still had some of these incidents. So you still need to be able to reach out to these individuals and assure them that they are going to have a positive experience, that they're not going to get hazed, that it's not just, they're not just joining a drinking club, right? So there's a lot of dynamics in place to reaching out. But I think an academic unit, Greek advisor, IFC, student organization, I think admissions office, whoever's willing to give you information, sometimes they're very guarded with that information. And then sometimes they're like, what do you need? What do you want? So it's really going to depend. But if you have questions about that, feel free to reach out to Hayden and I, and we can help you with that.
Another question from Riley in our North Florida chapter. He says, one thing that's great about DU is the diversity. Totally agree. But with the diversity comes different opinions. We have a lot of guys who are adamantly against DMing guys, period. So DMing guys on social media, how would you be able to articulate an argument for social media outreach? That's a great question. And quite frankly, and I think in Riley, I know we talked about this in our small group, even when I was in school, social media outreach was not a thing. We didn't even think about that. Right. And so I think the biggest thing here is it goes back to my point of we're the recruiters, right? And we need to make sure that we're doing that outreach and being smart about it and how we're doing that, right? It's just like if I got a guy's number, what's the difference between texting him and DMing him on social media, right? And so it's just that way of communication, that line of communication that you're having with them. It's also what a lot of other groups are doing, right? A lot of people are realizing, understanding that social media is the way to reach out to individuals. I was on a chapter visit a few years ago, and I learned that like a lot of recruitment was happening in like DMing guys through Snapchat. And that was like a whole new deal for me. Right. And they were actually seeing results from that of just guys showing up and then getting their phone numbers and building that relationship. And so I think it's one of those where have that conversation. Why are you kind of against kind of that DMing guys, period, but then also helping them understand that, hey, we need to be recruiting. This is a great way to outreach to guys. We also need to understand that in order to reach our goals, we need to reach out to as many guys as possible. If we're going to go recruit or have a goal of recruiting 15 guys in the fall, and we only reach out and have a names list of 75, our likelihood of getting to our goal of 15's probably not that high, but I need to continue to reach out and build relationships. I'll say the other thing is it's how you approach the social media outreach. If you just say, hey, Riley, like, are you interested in a fraternity? Like, clearly that's not going to be successful. And, you know, clearly that's not the way to do it. But there is a script, right? Getting them comfortable. You know, here's kind of that piece there. And if you want that, I can definitely send it to you. I've sent it to some groups who have been doing it. I think they've seen some relative success in that. But, you know, I think those are a few pieces that I would talk about with those individuals about, here's why the importance of DMing the guys. Dominic, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, but I also know that not everyone has to be DMing everyone, right? So it really, you know, maybe they DM someone they have some kind of affiliation or some knowledge of, but it really can be 2 or 3 people that really focus on that, where some chapters have had like social media people on their recruitment team that they don't mind being rejected. They don't mind being, you know, because sometimes people can't get over the awkward barrier. Oh, we don't want to be looked at as being awkward, but recruitment is kind of awkward man flirting when we really think about it, right? So what does that look like for us to be able to kind of get over it and be comfortable getting rejected? Because like I said, there are times that sometimes we have to turn people down and not give out bids, but also at the same time, people turn us down, right? So it goes both ways. So feeling comfortable just putting yourself out there. And that's why you have people on your recruitment team that are, you know, could talk to the wall and get it to join the chapter, right? So, you know, it's that whole, you know, so I think these are why, you know, my chapter, we're a very strong proponent of everyone in the recruitment process has a role. So that could be the person playing basketball, flipping burgers, whatever that is. You don't have to be the front and center person talking to all the prospective guys the entire time, but they were present, they were around, they were visible. But, you know, we want to give everyone a role in the chapter, but then people on the recruitment team had very specific roles, right? And that's where we found a lot of success throughout the year.
Yeah,
perfect.
Definitely. So, yeah, I think.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, I think another thing, another piece to that as well, if I can remember my thought as like I'm talking about it and then it escapes me right as I'm thinking about it, Riley, is this piece of, and I'm trying to get back to it. I don't think I can. So what I'm going to do, I don't know why that just escaped me, is we have another question from Walter. We'll answer Walter's question. I was thinking it comes back to me about the social media piece. It's just one of those days. So Walter's question, Dominic, is, are there any other good organizations on campus that could be fertile recruiting grounds, honors college, clubs, etc.? So from your experience, and again, another great opportunity for you guys in the chat, you know, organizations on yours. Yeah,
I think we mentioned, I mean, I think definitely in the chat we mentioned, it's going to depend on your campus. I think this is where knowing, and this is okay, it's okay to look at what chapters do well, do really well in recruitment and figure out what they're doing, right? And where they're meeting people. Because I know, like I said, when I've been a campus person, but also when I was a student, is figuring that out. Some campuses, it is religious organizations. Sometimes it's service organizations. It depends on where people's kind of direct interests are. I mean, a lot of times, you know, in the beginning of the school year, if someone used to run the programming stuff, the early like welcome back activities, my office used to run all those events that a lot of times freshmen weren't necessarily joining student organizations right away, but they were floating around at all of the welcome back events. And then, you know, chapters would just wear letters and attend those events. We had a carnival on campus. We had comedians come on campus. We had drag queen bingo is one of the things, right? Whatever it was, but people were coming to those events and just meeting people because there's lots of opportunities that it was open to the entire public. It wasn't just open to freshmen, right? So I know we talked about a lot of them in the chat, but I would say going back and thinking about where people are at, I do think academic programs are helpful. I do think honors programs, it's really, sometimes some chapters get really lucky of where, I know not every chapter has this, but if your freshmen are living in residence halls, their freshman year is really dependent on the theme of their residence hall. They might live in a leadership theme residence hall or a service theme residence, whatever that may look like, guys who are already ready to go and ready to join something. So depending on, you know, a lot of campuses have like living learning communities. So there's an opportunity for them to get involved really good. So Golden Key, yeah, it really kind of depends on the organizations and what that looks like. And like I said, as someone who's worked on a couple campuses and ran all the student organizations, it really depended on the school of where the most popular things were. Like I said, at Northwestern, it was all the pre-orientation programs, which were things that happened a couple weeks before school started, right? And then they would, or a week before school started, and then they would come in and move onto campus and then start their college career, right? For some people, it is, like I said, but other places I've been at, it's been the music groups on campus. It's been a cappella groups or like Campus Crusade or whatever that looks like, right? And so it's really kind of depends on campus, but you should go back and have that conversation, like a wider conversation of what are those organizations. And if you can't get involved in leadership roles right now, how can you be involved in their events? Or like as Hayden said, it doesn't mean you're completely shut out now, but like it's a matter of how can you be present, right?
So a couple of things. I remember what I was going to tell Riley, or you respond to the question, and then Walter, I'll respond to your question as well. And I think it's a good segue into what we're doing next week within Amplify DU. So first, Riley, what I was going to say is a lot of the times too, guys look at DMing or kind of this mass outreach as like a desperate way to find individuals on campus. And trust me when I say this, and on the expansion front, this is what we do. It is not, and people do not view that as desperate. More often than not, there's a lot of individuals who actually thank you for reaching out because they've been meaning to, or they didn't know how to reach out to you. And next thing you know, they're joined the organization, right? You also see it where if, like I said, a lot of groups are going this way, but there might be a lot of chapters or your organizations or your IFC groups on your campuses who aren't doing it because they may not want to. And all it takes is that one group, which can be Delta Upsilon, to do something different. And then obviously be successful in that, and then the other groups kind of be like, whoa, what did they do that was different, right? And it took was that social media outreach. So a couple pieces there for Riley. Real quick, I know Luke from Rutgers had talked about, it's not really an organization, but there's a huge apartment complex across the street at Rutgers. So very good way to traffic people and find interested people. That's also a good thing. Like at Oregon, we always knew where like the freshmen hung out. So, that first week we might go be very intentional about having our meals on campus in the freshman residence halls, and then just meet a group of guys sitting there and start having those conversations that way. The other piece, yeah, go ahead, Dominic.
I was just going to say, Nathan also put a little script in the chat box too. So opportunity, like just a quick, how do you do that? Like I said, Hayden has some of that information already. But I think it's important. You always hear the recruitment experts always say the reason why people don't join is they don't know how to join or they weren't asked, right? So until you ask them or give them an opportunity, they just don't know how to do this because they were too busy, beginning of the semester, beginning of the quarter. And then they're like, oh yeah, actually, this is pretty awesome. So these are opportunities that don't just wait and you're like, oh, right, we got 12 guys, we're done, and then we're good to go, right? So just the opportunities to continue to think about it. Doesn't mean you're always giving out bids, but you're always potentially on the lookout for prospective guys.
Yeah. So Walter, to add, so next week within our small groups and within our interactions via GroupMe or group chat or however you guys are doing it with your recruitment coaches, is they will be bringing up the topic of the ideal DU member. Right. And this is a great way to think about then what are those organizations on my campus that I need to target based off what we've identified as a good member of the organization. Right. So there's a lot of groups, and we do this at RLA, and I know some guys here have gone through this at RLA, where we identify those kind of key characteristics that we want to see. So for example, it's like, well, we want somebody to be excelling academically. Right. Okay. Well, we'll get a little bit more into what that means. But what that means too is, well, if we want academic individuals who excel academically, we're probably going to go target the honors college students, right? Or the business honors students, or whatever the case is, right? We want individuals who are really involved on campus and are leaders on campus. All right, we may go target then student government or individuals who follow student government, right? And so knowing also who you're looking for dictates who you're reaching out to, right? And so you being able to really figure out who's that ideal member or what are those individuals and characteristics we're looking for, we can then look at our student organization list, and every campus has it, right? Of here are all of our student organizations, and we can say, okay, who are those individuals that then we can start reaching out to and start building relationships with, right? Or if I'm at a club organization fair, I'm not only tabling for DU, but I'm going around to all of the tables, introducing myself and getting to know a little bit about the student organization to then see how Delta Upsilon might fit in there, right? So all of these things that just allow for you to branch out and build better relationships across the board. Yeah, that might not result in a member, but it might result in you sponsoring something with that student organization. And then like Dominic said, this individual might be in between different organizations and see Delta Upsilon's name on a sponsorship with Active Minds at the University of Missouri and go, oh, wow, I've been thinking about joining DU. And that kind of was a good piece there because I'm also part of Active Minds, right? And so it allows for that connection there as well. So good transition piece. So before we talk and kind of close out, any other questions? I don't think I see any in the Q&A box. Okay, so real quick, before we close out, next week will be a small group interaction. It won't be a meeting. It will be all kind of through the communication medium that your team and your group and your recruitment coach has determined. Most of that's either group chat or like iMessage group chat or group me or whatever that looks like. The recruitment coach at some point next week will pose different questions or a prompt, and we'll ask that you all participate with answering that prompt or providing ideas or providing feedback based off what that looks like. And that will be related to this idea of kind of 365 recruitment and the ideal DU member. So please be on the lookout for that. It is required in order to kind of fulfill that attendance piece to Amplify DU in the program to make sure that you're responding to that prompt. So the coaches the expectation is that every single member of the group, in order to receive that participation or attendance credit, will respond in some form or fashion and have that conversation. So continue to encourage you guys to spitball ideas within those group me's, utilize your recruitment coaches. They are there not just for those small group meetings or their interactions. They're really there to help talk through your ideas and your plans. So feel free to reach out to them one-on-one, but also reach out to your peer small groups and peer chapters within those small groups as well. So, well, that is it for tonight. Dominic and I really appreciate your guys' participation and showing up tonight, especially in the group chat and as we answered questions and during that question portion. We're really thankful for that participation on that end. Really excited again to continue to see what you all do throughout this summer as we move into the fall. This was recorded, so just like the last one, I will be sending this out for you all to reference and obviously pass along to other individuals as well. But Dominic, anything on your end before we close it out for good?
Not at all. Good luck with the planning, especially going this summer, going into the fall, but let us know what we can do to help you.
Great. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Go enjoy the rest of your evening, and we will see you in a few weeks at our next webinar.